do with ourselves? What are we to do with ourselves? Here we are. Okay. No matter how much prep, I'm just getting nervous. Thank you, Sylvie, for inviting me to share. It was very hard to say yes. And I'm just going to read this thing I wrote called Living on the Edge in Love and in Grief. This has been a hard story to write, not because of the subject, but because grief has been the backdrop of my daily life for so long that it's hard to disentangle and keep it short. And I had to write it out because there's no way I would have been able to just talk. I think some of you probably know this about me. I have 9 songs I could have opened this story with, because that was how I would disentangle things and get them out. This one was written around 2008, and those kids are my childhood best friends' kids. I was glad to see them singing along, and it also felt a bit ironic that these particular kids were singing these words. I don't think their parents and I are on the same page about mostly anything, and I still wonder what it meant to them. But apparently you can throw glockenspiel into any song and kids will sing along. So that's a good thing to keep in mind. Sometime during our interbeing days and the Bush years, Dick Harmon and I were talking about music, specifically why music. What the hell is music going to do to fix anything? I wasn't writing much those days and felt that songs I had been performing out had nothing meaningful or empowering to say. He encouraged me to keep playing, emphasizing that the world needs music, the activists need music, movements need music, people need music, okay? So soon after this conversation, I came across the lyrics to a Bob Dylan song, Masters of War, in a Howard Zinn book entitled Artists in a Time of War. After reading these words, I decided that I'd end every show with the song, a cappella, and some sparse accompaniment so that the words were loud and clear. I figured if I'm on a stage with a mic, I need to be saying something. Everybody needs to be saying something about this, right? There won't be any stages to perform on if we don't get the word out and get on top of this. Singing Masters of War over and over began to inspire my own writing, and soon more songs were born, and I had a newfound understanding of the power and empowerment of music in both sharing and receiving. My album, We the Dangerous Weapons, came out in 2012. I had an unfounded hope that somehow this little album might make a small dent. Wishful, self-centered artist thinking. The title came from a piece of writing that Dick had handed out in his organizing in the biocommons class. Quote, man is dealing with dangerous weapons whenever he interferes with arrangements pre-established by a power higher than his own, wrote Charles Marsh, a paleontologist, in 1874. He continued, we can never know how wide a circle of disturbance we produce in the harmonies of nature when we throw the smallest pebble into the ocean of organic being. So here we are 150 years later, learning just how wide a disturbing circle we can make with millions of pebbles thrown into the sacred, fragile ocean of being, now amid the 6th mass extinction caused by us. And there doesn't seem to be a quick, clear way out. Or is there? Cheryl, Dick, and others can tell you the answer seems to lie in the ground, in the soil, right under our feet. Go nature. The problem is too many humans are beyond corrupt, bought and sold and whittled into submission by the money gods, while consumerism and technology by design have distracted us and suppressed almost any possibility of a mass movement in the right direction. Not to mention that the production of all the many chips and all the many gadgets we're addicted to is a hugely resource-intensive industry. And big industry tells us that we, the consumers, need to change our ways while they keep dumping poison into and onto everything. This is definitely a both and. The rampant corporatizing and privatizing has turned anything life-giving into a business. So how do we dig all of life out of this? And how does a person have any hopes or dreams anymore as we inch toward inevitable collapse? I ask because I've lost my own. And being in my 40s, I can't imagine what younger generations are feeling about this. I'm not sure how I came to be where I am with this deep caring and an overwhelming grief. I grew up on Long Island, a densely populated, mostly conservative place with a hyper-consumerist mentality and lots of natural beauty. My hometown on the south shore of the island might be underwater by 2050, according to some studies. Few seeds were planted here in my young brain that had anything to do with the environment. One of these seeds was given me by our music teacher in high school, Mrs. Murata, when we sang This We Know, a different arrangement from the one the choir sang last week. As a kid, my doctors, as I called them, were my piano and the waters nearby, and I needed them regularly. Like many places, the town is full of streets named after trees that had been largely removed for homes, as well as after Native American words from the area tribes who, along with the trees, had been all but decimated by our colonizing. There are too many towns on Long Island with Native American names because we take and then we take again. Quogue, Ronkonkoma, Amagansett, Montauk, Massapequa, Setauket, Wyandanch, just to name a few. I was intrigued with books about the wisdom and ways of life of the Native Americans and would find myself sad and with a deep longing. These beautiful people were nowhere to be found, and I had a lot to learn. For college, I went as far away as I could get without leaving the state to the deep west of New York. It was a culture shock, a much slower pace of life, way less populated, tons of beautiful countryside, and really nice people who knew immediately where I was from. What accent? You have an accent. No, I never met Joey Buttafuoco or Amy Fisher. It's a big island. Though it was also conservative and I was trapped in my little college bubble, I somehow came into a greater awareness of what was going on in regard to the environment, though I can't pinpoint exactly who or what caused this to happen over those 5 years, other than my becoming more of who I was in this lifetime. Fast forward to my life in Portland, which began in October of 2000. It was easy to learn how to live more sustainably here, at least in the early aughts. I found a little sticker soon after I moved here that said, "Find what you love what you find," and I decided to heed that advice. On my own, I became almost hyper aware of my own carbon consumption. It never felt forced, just common sense in the scheme of things. And I wondered why more people weren't living with this awareness, given what was coming to light. 2 years later, I'm back east and on the way to Dartmouth for my brother's graduation. My family pulled off the highway to eat lunch, and McDonald's was the verdict. I said, "No, thank you. I'll go down the street to that bagel shop we passed and eat there." One of my brothers chuckled and patronizingly asked me what I had against McDonald's. After some stammering, I blurted out, "Well, cow farts are ruining the atmosphere." I was reminded in that moment that I would never be able to present a good argument without years of training. He continued to call me granola or hippie for some years until he awoke to some hard truths and finally understood where I was coming from. Though I think he still eats McDonald's. They got him what they're supposed to do. Back to Portland, even though my songwriting had evolved thanks to Howard, Bob, Dick, and others, my hope and faith in humanity to turn this thing around was waning. In 2009, Scott Brazil drove me in his silver 1985 Toyota Tercel to pick up my own 1986 Toyota Tercel of the same color for $500. I needed a way to get myself to gigs, to play songs about our current demise. And it seemed strange to me that I'd be driving an old car with some serious engine problems to do this, but it was all I could afford. My guilt was soothed a bit by some friends reminding me that I didn't create the car culture and that we have to work with what we have. I accepted this part truth, part rationalization, realizing everything about my shows was reliant on fossil fuels. Also in 2009, I learned from Derek Jensen, an environmental writer and activist, that the Latin root of the word compassion is compati, suffer with or suffer together. I felt very strongly about this word and decided to tattoo it to my wrist to remind me of why I'm here and why I should stick around. Only after I had bandages wrapped around both my wrists, blood and the blood red ink coming through, did the symbolism occur to me. I went to a show afterwards and people gave me concerned looks until I told them it was just a tattoo. I'm okay. The Occupy movement in 2010 added some fire to my flickering hope candle. Is this possible? A true uprising and awakening in my lifetime? But unsurprisingly, that movement was soon stifled. And 2 years later, when the IPCC came out with one of their many damning reports on the climate crisis ahead of us, I decided to make a firm decision about something I was now barely wavering on. Through teary eyes, I said to my partner at the time, let's not ever have kids. This decision made me cry more, but I knew in my heart of hearts that my conscience wouldn't be able to bear it. I don't like saying this in front of parents, and I apologize. I don't judge. I think most of us know that I love children, so thank you for having them. Some of my favorites are right here. A few months ago, I got a text message from Dustin Riggs. It was a picture of Willa, her head resting on her arms and her smile sweet and sleepy. Willa wanted to send to you, he said, and I melted. The love and trust are real. Perhaps deep inside each of us, there's an innate gratitude for being alive in this wild time that those we're in relationship with, even within children. When Bernie Sanders ran in 2016, I gave my all to a cause for the first time in my life, recognizing his rise as a direct result of Occupy. Finally, more people were beginning to understand just how much change was needed, minus most politicians and mass media, of course. The status quo, having gained a firm footing over the past 4 decades, was killing us and every living thing. And after his crushing loss and another break in hope and heart, the grief grew. They will not let life win. How could I have hoped for such a thing? Greta Thunberg brought another light of hope, first alone, then with hundreds of thousands of youth. And no matter how strong, it seems these voices still get lost in the black hole of greed. And as my mind and heart are pushed closer to some terrible edge, I keep asking myself, what are we to do with ourselves with all this knowledge of both the climate crisis and the unwillingness of so many to budge? Fires are still lit, though. Children and adults still carry lights, speaking their truths, showing up in the streets, organizing around all the injustices, climate, racial, immigration, education, and these are all connected. What do we have to lose when we're so near this edge, especially the children? A few years ago, I was talking with my friend Neil, a man in his 70s who spent more than half his lifetime healing people. We share very similar views and emotions about these things. At some point, while we talked about our grief, he held out his hands and said that we can only do what is right in front of us. I am one person, and I know I can only do what small things I can here and now, for I am a speck of dust on this globe, and this globe is a speck of dust among our stars, and our stars among the universe, and we're all made of stardust. From this perspective, nothing matters, and everything matters, and the anger, sadness, beauty, and meaninglessness come all at once. We've done horrible things to this unbelievable, billions of years in the making miracle that is Earth, and that is us. Jack Gilbert, a poet, said, "We must have the stubbornness to accept our gladness in the ruthless furnace of this world. We should give thanks that the end had magnitude. We must admit there will be music despite everything." Music on a sinking ship. I realized a piece of my calling is to provide this. I love creating. I love sharing. I love trying to help carry people through these days as I can. It is all life-giving. And I love that so much beauty is still around and that I'm able to let it into my bones and belly now and then. And I do love people despite all my whining about all our terrible ways. Some of us are very not terrible. We are also miracles within this miracle. And I am grateful I can still love, create, and share. I don't fear this precipice before us. I do grieve its existence and the reasons for it. And I often feel stunned into a place of near apathy. Living on this edge, I feel I'm sometimes ready to jump and take lots of folks with me so we can let this earth heal and let her save more species from extinction. So we can allow the life that still treads lightly and still carries reciprocity in its bones, inherit what we leave and make it whole again. Well, I will not jump over that edge, and I will live according to the message on my wrists as much as I am capable. I promise. Thanks.
Thank you, Allie.
Thanks for listening.